It's thinking about it.
Okay.
There we go. Done redirecting to you. Okay. It's
Nice.
thinking about
Sounds like it's working, Martin.
it. It is working. I should be able to now go to livestream.agentics.org and we'll go luck. No, I still see Brad from the other day. All right, so I will fix up the livestream.agentics.org site. I will let you start the meeting.
Yeah, so welcome to the Agentics Lab. It's going to be a fun day of us like showing the stuff that we built. I had some cool stuff from Sunday. I built in like 4 hours and then a UI on Monday or Tuesday, actually, right before the Agentics meetup in Toronto. And Ruben's like, just make some UIs, and I don't make a lot of UIs. I think of the terminal as the UI these days. But I'm like, okay. So I went full Colby on a couple of these. And people like find it more exciting, I guess, when they're not just like looking at a code base, they're actually looking at a project. Um, but we'll let a couple people roll in. We've got about 20, including the note takers that are attending. So I'm sure there's probably going to be a few more people coming in. But does anyone else want to show some stuff that they've been building? Stuart, I know you got a lot of things that you're building. I'd love to see any progress on that. That's the project that's on top of mind lately, Stuart, is that one that you're using to basically track Reuven's latest inventions, because that's a very common theme of everyone saying, "Oh, I can't keep up with this guy. It's
That
impossible,"
is.
right? And
So
um,
happy to show that. I basically came out with an evergreen version of a notebook LM with 120 sources that are now getting updated daily or nightly, because who the hell
right.
knows how often he rolls new stuff. It's usually about every 38 seconds. Um, but the interesting thing is it now literally gets to the point of regenerating all of the studio outputs whenever there's new input. So, for example, it's not Cloudflow anymore, it's Rooflow. So the video that goes out is welcome to Rooflow, and what is Rooflow? So it doesn't confuse people who still think it's Cloudflow, et cetera, et cetera. So happy to show that if that's of use to folks.
Yeah,
Stuart, did you
no,
change the URL? I added it to the prototype next stage of the website. It's not loading. So is the URL changed or the same?
For the notebook LM.
The one you sent. I'll look at it again. I didn't want to.
I have two. I have one that's Ask RoofNet, and I think that one I may have changed.
Okay,
And
that's
I,
the
and I
one
can
that
give you
I.
the updated version of that. That's the overall thing. The other one is just the Notebook LM that's a supporting character to that, but something that's you guys might find useful just to be able to go in and ask questions directly.
Okay.
yeah, I would love that because I spend an awful lot of time actually like just looking around and it's get up. Claude browser extension helps me a lot with it, but this is much more thorough than what it can do. It can
Sure.
just kind of read URLs and
I
read me.
just threw it in the chat. I'll give you the first one, and then let me pull up the Railway app, and I'll give you that one. And lest anybody think that I have anything that I'm focused on keeping here, let me assure you that's not the case, because I look at all you guys and I would love to leverage all your expertise. So here is the GitHub repo that I've also made public that has all of the information. So that's all three of them. By all means, guys,
Do you see?
grab, use, utilize. Oh, and of course, they're in the wrong chat, right?
I was gonna ask Nick if he saw it. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
I just put him in the Read AI chat here. Let's try it in this one.
You've got our
And just
attention though. You can see, Stuart. We're all like ready to grab this link.
Listen, we're all struggling with the same thing.
This is a
Uh,
lot better than the
did that
do a
come in
deep
as one
do a
big
deep
link?
dive on everything that's been updated. No deeper, no deeper, which is
Right.
5 prompts that I have every time there's a release.
Awesome.
Correct. Here, I'm gonna reissue these as three separate links. So there's the railway, there is the notebook, and there is the GitHub repo. There we go. Let me delete the other mishmash of stuff. And anyone and everyone, please use, utilize, enhance in any way that we can. I'm like you all just trying to figure out. Roof's very prolific, and that's great, but it can be overwhelming if you're doing anything else, like, I don't know, trying to support yourself or your family, and also trying to keep up with everything he's building.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I definitely put that in my notes. Excellent. Gonna take that for a spin.
Sure.
But also, Martin, it'd be nice to take a look at some of the stuff you've been doing. I don't know if you had a chance to demonstrate that other than in our smaller group calls. But Martin's been doing some really interesting things to help the foundation, one with this live stream we're doing right now, but also with some summarization tools for, conversations that are going on in different channels in the foundation, as well as auto posting to YouTube from live streaming and things like that. So all these problems that we all know exist, and Martin's saying, okay, I got these three problems and I'm going to focus my efforts around that. So I, gotta give kudos where it's due. And I love it when people solve problems in the Genix Foundation. So, you know, Martin's been my top of my kudos list for the past couple of weeks that he's been working on this stuff.
We should be able to fix our own problems. Right.
That's right. That's right, Martin. That's right. So I can show you guys some stuff while people are loading up what they're gonna show or whatever, if that's cool with everyone.
Go for it.
Yes.
All right. So I made this thing, and what I did was I asked Claude browser extension. I'm like, look at RoofNet, I'm like, look at RoofNet and look at all the packages. Of course, it misses a lot of packages because the guy's got like a million packages, right? But it finds a lot of them, and then so it lists them all. And I'm like, okay, now what can I build that's like crazy? I said something like that, right? And then it gives me a list of like 10 rudimentary projects. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like I want the real crazy. And I say to it, never been done, never been invented, doesn't exist. Like that's the only thing you're allowed to tell me. And one of the projects it came up with was this synapse graph, and essentially sits between the brain computer interface tools with AI, AI solutions on the but there's no middle layer. So when end users use it, it's like it almost starts over again, doesn't remember anything about the person other than what's in that little session. So this actually is able to capture that. So when they go back and use it again, it knows them. So it's just a memory layer. So it's like, well, how could that possibly not really exist? I'm sure it exists somewhere, but Claude believed it didn't exist anywhere. So I thought, there's at least not that many people that are using it now. So whatever, that's the boring part of it or whatever, but I could show the whole presentation slide deck that had Notebook LM, but this is much more fun. So this is essentially like someone's brain, and like intentions that are going on in it. It is simulated. It's not actually attached to anything, of course, but it's still cool, right? So yeah, it's just, there's these intents, and I was just saying when the call got started, like I went like full Colby on this, and
What could
and
you
so,
attach it to?
uh, this is just like I just said, like, pretend that there's someone wearing like a smartwatch or something, and it's tracking their brain, and then it came up with some brain computer interface, like Again, I'm not the best at communicating. This is a Sunday night project I built, but there's I can't remember the company offhand, but it kept repeating it, and this is like the main authority in this space. So, oh, it's going really, I haven't seen it go this crazy before. So, it's really, this person's brains are really, maybe we got to turn this down a little bit. But it's probably like my brain when I'm like watching Reuven present projects if I haven't heard anything for a while. But so this is so the intents and anyways, there's a couple layers of Laura that are going on here. Um, Again, I'm still learning about Laura's, but there's the one that Reuven is using. I think it's Laura 3 or Laura 2 is sort of the first level, first layer. Maybe I do need Notebook LM to be better able to explain what's going on here. Um, but then it goes into like a more, this has a lot of things baked into it that Reuven uses, obviously. There's like min cuts built into this. Oh, you can see it here. There's LoRa adaption. It's using the vector memory. So this is basically the actual like flow of things. But it's yeah,
I
like
have
the
to
stuff
admit
I'm
that
building. Like I can't explain the shit I'm building, man. Like it's too crazy.
yeah, I was
Um,
about to say it feels like a word salad to me. Like when we get into Laura's or what have you, like I understand what Minka is. Right? It's just but when it comes to um what Laura is and when you use it, I have no
yeah,
idea.
these are the things I'm spending most of my time on, Martin, is just like Reuven built this crazy thing. Like, what are these things, And sure, I'm using them, but what actually are they,
Well, maybe someone
And
can explain. Like if you don't know and I don't know, so we have other people on the call.
yeah, for sure. Um, so anyways, I
And
got
if no one knows, then that's a reasonable request to take back.
yeah, yeah,
Go
for
to
sure.
Claude and tell me like I'm five.
Yeah, that's how I do it, man. That's how I
Like,
do it. And just because I read it over the weekend doesn't mean I know it and can teach it to people just yet. Um, I'm not that kind of coach. Like I got to be actually know something really well before I'm starting to create to instruct people on it. I can show you how to build crazy stuff with with Claude with Rooflow and stuff like that. But the other project I built on Sunday night was this Quake vector. So I made sure to tell the Claude code browser extension, like make sure you're using root vector. Like don't waste your time on like some 3-year-old repo or something. Like make most of the Reuven's like crazy stuff is coming from through Revector these days, and it's because he's baked in everything, right? So it's like one that rules them all kind of thing, right? Like RVF, like it's all the same, it's got everything in it. So like why would I look around everywhere and try and wire things up when it's already wired into Revector? So I
Well,
created this
don't you
Quake.
find that root vector kind of means two different separate things? Like root vector is a thing in itself, right? It is sort of that vector space piece and relations across a graph. Literally from one point to another, that is a vector. But I think really it's more than that. I think it's more like a root dev environment that includes root vector. So like if you want the breadth of Reuven's tooling, then you want RuVector and you want the breadth of all the other tools. So I think naming is essential for understanding. And if we conflate a RuVector with the other parts of RuDev, then we're probably missing both of the breadth and the special characteristics of RuVector as well.
Yeah, it's like it's the way what you're describing in my mind is kind of like the OG root vector and what we have now. Like the original project drastically expanded into what we have now, which has everything cooked into it, right? And like originally it didn't have that, right? Um, and I think
Now
yeah,
it's
like
more like a, collection of building blocks, so Lego
yes.
blocks that you can connect into something bigger. So it is a base for most of other roof project, but it is not uh, only one. Yeah, as
Yeah,
Martin said.
yeah. So anyhow, this Quake vector, it looks at sensors in a network, and this is all. It's funny because people are like, "Oh, this sounds a lot like what Reuven does." It's like, yeah, because like I just follow what Reuven does, and I just listen to what he says, right? And do my best to do it as much like Reuven as I can, right? That tends to work pretty well for me. And so sensors and so this is on a network of a number of them, and you can see it's using the GNN inference. So the Sona, it's got all these different things that are all like Reuven stuff, right? So this is yeah again the boring part, but the exciting part, okay, the UI. So this is like simulating looking at oh, it's searching for earthquakes and all. Whoa, there's an earthquake right there, that explosion. So that's like indicating, okay, we found an earthquake in the network of sensors. But you can see it's like it's like much more fun when you're like looking at some crazy UI, And so yeah, this is it just indicating. So there's three. It looks like there's three that it's tracking here.
Mm.
But
One of the
again,
things I
it's
found quite useful is to ask
earthquake.
um, Claude to embed like a help indicator on various pages, so that the user knows how to read that given page, right? Because otherwise it can be like, there's a lot of stuff going on, and um, how can I explain something if Claude has built a different intent, right? So um,
Yeah, not a bad idea. Just like as opposed to an FAQ, more like a chat extreme FAQ or something like
well,
that.
it's more like situated help text. And that
Yeah,
might sound boring, but literally a little question mark that opens up to a paragraph of what am I looking at.
yeah,
It's
that's
pretty
true.
helpful.
I agree, and it's things that like never really people have never really seen. So like that could definitely be an a oversighted. So you can see this is the critical one here. So it's like that's the one that's blowing it up into that constellation, right? And you can just see that it's checking, and that's essentially what it's doing.
Here's a
Um,
question for you, right? So you built this off RuVector. So did
yeah.
this include um, Dragon's QE testing as part
It
of its
it
build?
didn't, but it'd be at the stage now where like after you build everything and you're like, oh, it's really cool, and then it's like you take Dragon's thing and say like, you know, look at this and create, what's the vulnerabilities. And I have another project which you guys have seen before that I'm in this phase where I'm actually going to bake in the QE fleet at the very like last legs. Like it looks like the job is completely done. And it's like, okay, but like, is this thing secure? Like, is it functional? Is it like, how do
Well,
we
I
benchmark
have to
it for success?
question as to whether at the last stage, and I ask this because Dragon knows I
Don't wait
am
until the last stage. So you can
exactly.
get value with some of the skills in agents at the ideation phase. So when you're writing the
Right.
requirements, or even when you initially write the ADRs, I would suggest to release that QE requirement validator agent and ask it to, do the analysis and see if something was missed. And just by asking it, not if you don't read the ADRs yourself, ask Claude, did we miss something? Just a simple loop, to return it once more back, uh, after maybe, compacting the conversation or something like that. Just, return it back to the ADR to check if something is missed if you don't use the QE agents. Yeah.
And even if you do read it, right, Dragon, like if I read it, like what is it gonna? It's gonna know a lot more of what's missing than me. reviewing it,
Definitely.
sometimes yeah, and I see some glaring oversights at times, or just like, getting off track with the actual intent of the project, right?
Mhm.
But those are pretty obvious things that maybe a human would help with, because you actually know the contextual nature of what you're trying to accomplish. But as far as, the
But it needs
technical
to be a
criteria.
highly, experienced person to recognize these kind of gaps and specialized in the domain, I would say.
Right, exactly. I don't know anything about earthquakes, right?
In other
So
words, none of us.
Yeah, well,
right,
we're talking about really about functional versus non-functional requirements, right? So, I would recognize the functionality that I'm looking for is not there, or that it doesn't behave in the way, in a logical flow. But that doesn't mean that it is secure. It doesn't mean that it could handle traffic under pressure. Um, so those non-functional
Is it
requirements,
accessible? Is it,
exactly.
so there are a lot of, user experience. So is it really the problem that we are solving at the end, in a really user-friendly way?
Right. So the notion of when to introduce QE fleet, and even the notion that I should consciously do so, because sure, I was trained as a software engineer, so I would have these things in mind. But many people who are developing nowadays are, like, designers, or they come from a functional background, like they're a physicist or something. They or say they're a naturopathic doctor, where they have never ever seen code, but they know that they want a bunch of functionality. So they are going to be prompting, but they are certainly going to have, either in the back of their mind or not in their mind at all, not as a forefront requirement, that this thing should be secure, right? They're just not going to hit them. The accessibility, oh, I need to use it on a phone, and maybe a phone that opens up and therefore would need to be adaptable to screen. That is just, and retrofitting those things can be expensive and impossible, I would imagine, at some point. So I would question what should be the default palette of things that um, Rooflow should be introducing. And even, is that at the level of Rooflow or a level of RooVector? And that's why I question whether things are RooVector as that vector across a graph space type functionality, or RooVector as in RooDev, like Roof's deepest um, group of emerging functionality. And I would claim that something like QE Fleet should be a default upfront, at least as a progressive unfold of things that, basic things like security. And I'll give an example. So I had to, in order to get Claude to continuously develop for me, give it a bypass key so that it could authenticate itself for one of my apps, right? So it didn't have to keep, or because essentially in one of my apps you authenticate as a Discord user, and of course it is not a Discord user, but it needs to be able to test end to end. So I asked it to give itself a secure bypass key, put it into the environment variable, and one of the things that we found when we ran QE Fleet against it was that it had hard coded it elsewhere, right? Was I looking for that? No. Did I expect that? No. Was I horrified? Of course, right? So the notion that I should have to introduce QE Fleet is something I should know better, especially having been on all these calls. But you can imagine that, as we progressively power people through our way of developing things, they will have missed all those prior calls, and they are just trying to prove to themselves end to end that they can make magic happen. But we don't want them to have bad magic, right? We don't want to create all these functionality, security, accessibility, whatever issues across anybody that might be tempted to use what is certainly more advanced than a lot of stuff that's out there. So it is a responsible act for us to ensure that a default palette of things gets brought in without conscious, inclusion. And I know that we as a community like to bring the most and brightest and advanced people into our community. And I think we do a great job of blending all the advanced knowledge at the edges and what have you. But we also have to make sure that we have an on-ramp, because that is the way that we embrace newcomers and provide continual value across the entirety of our community.
Okay, Matt.
Hey, okay. I'll share my screen. This is the first time I got output like this, but this is to your question, Nick, about what is LoRa, right? And then I said, ask Claude, and I'll show you guys what, and gals. Can I share the screen? I'll show you well, my approach, how I think about it and what I do. Let's see here. All right. Can you guys see the screen?
Not yet.
Yep,
Now we
yes.
can.
Is it too small?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bigger for us there,
I
Matt.
moved to a bigger monitor.
How about that?
Better.
Better.
Can you see it good now?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
All right. So this is what, so I take a cake approach. What I mean by that is a couple layers of data and input that I need to make decisions, and I'll explain. Sometimes I start anew by looking at the repos and the tools of what it is that I'm the question is root vector. Up here, what I did is I just grabbed the repo, root vector and LoRa right here. And this is the prompt. But sometimes what I also do is I start with the application, but I'll to stay focused, I'll stay here. So I took root vector and LoRa and pasted the repos in there. My prompt was take a look at these two repos, explain to me what root vector and LoRa does, how it works, then give me some examples of technologies I can build with it. What are some existing techs that are similar to this, and give me pros versus cons of the existing tech, explain why this is better, how it works. When you give me the ideas, technologies, I can build, give me 5 in B2B sales, 5 in B2B developer tooling, along with the TAM, SAM for the tool. Lastly, include disruptive tech ideas and why it's disruptive. Don't forget to explain LoRa in simple terms and why I want to use it, advantages and disadvantages. And this is what I always do at the end of the prompt. I sometimes do ultra think, but I always do ask me any questions you need. That has helped me 100% all the time so far. So then it went on to tell me this is new. I hadn't seen this visual, because sometimes what I do is I also want to know the architecture. I want to know what I'm building, what would it look like, and or the I learn about the tool by seeing the architecture. So what is root vector? Self-learning database operation, not just vector database, that right? And so it's telling me what root vector is. Then the question that Nick brought up about LoRa, I've seen it. I don't know what LoRa is. So the simplest possible mental model, imagine you hired a brilliant generalist doctor, teaching them to become a brain surgeon from scratch takes years and enormous costs. But if you give them a 2-week residency, they're suddenly excellent. I kind of understand that, right? LoRa is the residency program for AI models. So that means it's quicker. It takes a short amount of time to create a model, possibly, right? I'm kind of in there. So then in plain English, a large AI model, massive matrix of number. So this type of stuff, when I'm learning something new, I have to marinate on it. I kind of get it, but I had to take pieces in chunks. But then what really helps is I see it, I see the architecture, I understand what it's saying it is. Then I want to know, why don't I want to use it? right? If the rank is too low, you lose expressiveness. But then most impactfully, what I also do with Laura is I want to know what is existing that is like it, so I can kind of draw a correlation. If I don't know it, I don't understand it. I need to know what is it like. Give me some analogies, and then so it's looking at right now Roof Vector, how it compares to existing tech. So I know Pinecone, I know Weaviate, I know Quadrant. I've seen these. I kind of general understanding what they do and how they work, and then it gives me all the breakdowns and the cost and all that stuff, and then it goes into, I can read more about it. Then this is the part that I like to get to, is what can I build? What can I do? So self-learning, this is the B2B sales products, self-learning lead scoring engine, competitive intelligence platform, sales call coaching. I have some skills embedded in here, so it kind of knows. I have something called a V Stack, which I'm doing like a lot of voice AI applications. So it knows some things that have already is in my radar. So it's already telling me some things that I'm excited about. And then B2B developer tooling, living API documentation platform, that would be good, right? And then incident response intelligence system, SOC 2 compliance. Vanta is $1 billion company. See, here's the TAM right here, 40 billion. SAM is 6 billion. That's service addressable market. So if I wanted to dive in on that, then I could start going into the PRDs and all the other stuff. And then here's Nick, the disruptive tech ideas, right? Cognitive container marketplace, edge native CRM. I could go in, dive in on that, and then just kind of keep going. That's kind of my
This is
process.
really slick.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is
you
one of
should.
the cleaner versions I've seen of this, Matt. Really nice work.
Yeah,
Right
you
on.
should publish this as a artifact or
I
something,
agree.
and
This is
share it with
beautiful.
us, because I would like to read this when I have
Okay.
some time later today or tomorrow or something.
What does that look like?
I
Artifact.
think if you
Okay.
just click share, it'll
Oh, okay.
it'll
Just share it.
Yeah,
it'll
yeah.
give you
Publish as an
a
artifact, throw it
A
in.
link.
published
Yeah.
option. Yeah,
Okay. All right. I'll do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great, man.
But that's just really the I wanted to share the structure. It's not all together. This is just what I was doing it quick on a call, but it's really, what is it? How do I use it? Why do I want to use it? What is it like? What are some existing things that I can, how much money can I make, right? If I, and then the other part is I'm my core framework, what I'm building is off of Rooflow and Agentic QE. That's where I start, and then I have my own what I call the V Stack, which is voice AI in the voice AI space, which is PipeCat and Cloud Onyx and Switchboard Audio. So I have a voice AI stack that but everything that I build starts with Rooflow and Agent QE off the top, and then I kind of bring in other pieces and try to learn and combat against those other pieces. So yeah.
So you don't start on Rue Vector?
Well, I hang on a minute, Gio. I'll call you right back. I'm on a call. So yes, I think the biggest thing, like with Stu, and that's a good question, Martin, because what Stu made is perfect because I'm always going to Rue's repo and I paste the whole thing, and I want to see how much of the whole roof stack that I can use. And I know I'm building with not Cloudflow, Rooflow.
Rooflow.
Yeah, I know I'm building with Rooflow, and I know my pillars are Rooflow and Agenic QE. Step one. Then step two is depending on what I'm building and how I'm building, and I'm always going back and forth with, for some reason, when I build the PRDs, it's recommended Redis a lot. And I'm like, well, why can't I use root vector? I don't want to use Redis. And so I'm always arguing back and forth with Claude on, can't I use this part of root stack? Can I use this part of root stack? So I'm trying to figure out how can I start with root stack to start and root vector, like you were saying, Martin. But I just know that my two starting places is how do I build it? Rooflow. How do I test it? Agentic QA. And then what is the my happy place, which is the voice AI tools. And then I bring in the database, and sometimes I need it, sometimes I don't. So I don't have a clear answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah, Stuart.
One question I would ask is, one of the things we all struggle with, or sorry, I struggle with all the time, is being in Claude Code, running Rooflow, and not knowing if I'm talking to Rooflow or Claude Code. And I know he says, hey, it's a positive virus, it takes over, et cetera, in a positive parasite sort of way. But what I've found is it doesn't really work that way. I start out on Rooflow, 20 minutes later, I'm on a different screen, I come back, and Claude Code is running it, and it's completely forgotten that Rooflow is this advanced architecture. And so it's completely skidded into something else. And this has happened to me very frequently on a lot of projects as of late. It's one of my single biggest frustrations is I can't get it to keep saying, stop trying to do the orchestration on your own. Give it to Rooflow. It knows things you don't. You're trying to do stuff that your dad should be doing, and you're a kid and you don't know what your dad knows. And I don't know the technical way to articulate that, but it is driving me absolutely crazy because I'm trying to get some client stuff done. And I have some really cool things that are evolving that I'd like to talk to this group about, because one of the things I think we need to start to do is to figure out how does this coalesce around the business requirements that people are looking to do right now. And because of what I'm doing, where I'm doing AI strategy consulting for big firms, I'm seeing them tell me, here's all the crap we're struggling with. And it's not the technical stuff that you guys know, because I'm not talking to the guys that deep. I'm talking to the guys who are saying, I have 15 systems and they don't integrate. Now what? And that's the kind of stuff that I believe RuVector can help us do. But I would like us to maybe see if we could spend some time around those things. Because honestly, guys, there's a ton of need right now for all of that. I think Ru's probably got the right architecture to do it. I'm struggling with how to effectively articulate that. And even when I can find people who've bought off on it, I'm having difficulty building out the full implementation because of this backslide problem. Now, first question, am I the only one going through this?
No, you're not.
No.
Okay. Then that is something I think we collectively need to solve with Ruv, because his answer of works for me is no good when it doesn't work for any of us.
Yeah.
And that is a fundamental issue that we are all struggling with, and it messes me up on just about every project. I can't tell you the number of projects I am 80% done on, only to find out they've skidded into something else and I can't get it back.
And what you're talking about, Stuart, there's a ton of need for a solution, but there's not a ton of need for roof stack because people don't know the power and the capability of
right.
Yeah,
RBF,
I can't quantify
all of that stuff.
I can't concretely quantify the difference between what Rooflow gives me versus raw Claude. And I think the big part of that is getting beyond the bullet points of what is in RuVector is here's an example of how it learned. Here's an example of a skill that it uses. Here's an example. Like I need concrete examples. And that's a lot easier to sell than bullet points.
Totally agree. Matt and I had this conversation last week because I know there's the whole conversation about deciding to come out with a new opportunity for a job board, right? Matt, this public or private? I'm not saying anything.
No, it's all good. Everybody knows we're working. Nick's called too.
And the issue with that job board is it's wonderful to say, here's a bunch of guys. It's better to say, here's a bunch of guys that know a technology that you really need to be bringing in your organization.
Well, that's the key. Yeah, and that's the key. How do we get people to understand roof stack is ibuprofen or penicillin?
Right.
that. But yeah.
And that's really what I've been attempting to do on a couple of different levels. None of them are all the way there, but that's germane to everything I do with Roof. It's hard to get all the way there, but I want to share it with you guys because I think you can fill in the gaps that I have, and I may bring some product positioning knowledge from my prior life as a head of sales and marketing for software companies for a couple of decades to find a way to leverage this because I think we all want to do it. And I think the fact that you guys all know this, I've got people coming to me saying, I need to build some really cool stuff. Who can I call on? And Matt, I want you to have that board together so I can go, these are the gurus that understand this stuff better than anybody. They're the guys you want to drive into. And that could be a combination of a job board and a gig hiring opportunity. If I need somebody to go do this, who's a badass and wants to take it on, bid on it, whatever the thing is that we think would be useful, that's the place I want to take this. Because right now my concern is Ruve is doing really well with it because he understands it. People are drawn to him. He can deliver it. They understand their problems and he can do it. It's not bubbling out to the rest of you and us in the way I think it can and should. That's what Matt and I were trying to work on.
Yeah, and this takes time, like like iterative self-training and discipline, and it's just as much as this stuff is helping us do these dynamic things, it's like in my experience, a heck of a lot of trial and error, and I've been attempting to build with Reuven's stack for 3 years or so, and in the past 6 months, we'll call it, I'm now at a point where I can actually go into a client's project and actually do what they want me to do.
Well,
Right.
And
we have
but
to
it took
collect what people are doing, and we have
There
to
you go.
surface it.
Yes.
We have to effectively vote on it, and then we have to push the stories that we agree are working. Right?
Correct.
So that collection process requires that people do a little bit of homework, that they create a short snippet of what they are doing so that they can get someone else's attention. Right? This really was what I had the video ask feedback or CP radio thing, right? Whatever we're going to call that, is just like, I want to collect a piece of video from people, because if you can pitch it in 8 seconds and then make people listen for 20 seconds and then after a minute convince others that they would want to replicate, push forward what you've said, then we can create an amplified signal. I think if we can handle that top of the collection process first, then we can start rolling.
Well, I would even add to that, Martin.
let's can we let Michael jump in here?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, we can't hear
Can't hear you.
we can't hear the audio there, unfortunately.
Give me a moment.
We'll be here, Michael.
Michael, hold that thought.
Yeah. So in addition,
Right here.
Oh, there he
Okay.
is.
Hello?
Go for it.
Sorry about that. It's my shtick. Couple things. Matt, I'm very interested in what you're doing with the voice stuff, because I've been doing some kind of voice processing, but I imagine you're going the other way. That might be for another time, but interesting stuff. The drift problem, I've definitely, we've all had the drift problem. Who am I talking to? Is this flow or not? And I think and we've kind of talked about this a little bit before, this kind of traceability problem, and like, did it do what I asked it to do, and where do I stand? And yes, I deployed this fleet of amazing, this swarm of robots that are out there doing these things, but did they do what I want them to do? Are they still on the mission, etc.? One of the things that I've been looking at is trying to get traceability. Like for this one particular project I'm working on, and I was just trying to pull it up, but and this maybe goes to to Dragon's stuff to a certain extent, but I've been using Gherkin and behavioral driven design as sort of a net to kind of say, okay, this is what, because the ADRs I think are a little problematic. I'll talk about that in a second, but the Gherkin files are basically saying, here are the features. Okay, I've got a file for every feature, Every feature has a set of scenarios that should pass. This works at the not only the API level, but also at the on the glass with the the UX. Okay, so you've got Gherkin for the front, Gherkin for the back. Step definitions flow from there so that you've got a completely testable requirement. And then what you do is you start mapping out to, you're able to track to GitHub issues, commits, pull requests, etc. And you sort of I leverage GitHub as kind of the um, the system of record, if you will. I mean, it kind of does what it does pretty well. It may be a certain amount of IO and network traffic that you're incurring because of that, and I think Jed was looking at Beans, and I looked at Beans briefly, but that seemed a little bit sort of reinventing the wheels to a certain extent. Although I think it may keep things, it minimizes the kind of IO that or the network stuff that's going on with Beans. But fundamentally, I think GitHub can solve the problem of what the hell are we doing? How far have we gotten? Who's done what? And are we still, are we on track? Now, that said, I haven't talked at all about root vector or any of the kind of learning stuff that can happen, which I think is almost, it's like kind of a separate, um, that can maybe be compartmentalized or internalized. But what I try and do, or what I've been trying to do with my projects, is kind of build this almost like a more traditional structure using techniques that have existed for a long time to so the agents have some kind of point of reference. And then one more note about the ADRs. I mean, historically, I've understood ADRs to be architectural decision records, and I think that they've kind of merged into in Rooflow, are they're a little bit more like a spec. And I think that where I found that gets complicated is I think that Claude Code still kind of has two definitions for an ADR, and it will, in some cases leverage the ADR as an architectural decision record, in other cases as a spec. Okay, and they're kind of competing interests, and I think that you need to. So what I've done is I've said, okay, ADRs exist. ADRs are a thing for, this is how we're going to structure the schema. These are the technologies that we're going to use. This is this is what the stack looks like. Okay, this is how we're going to handle this weird business rule. Okay, but it's not necessarily like a feature. Okay, and as such, by kind of relegating the ADRs to something else, which I'm concerned about conflict in terms of how Rooflow wants to move things and whether or not I'm competing with that. But by having the feature files, the GitHub issues, step definitions, and then I've got some tools that I can show in a minute here if I could get the stupid thing to spin up that allow you to kind of do a traceability across that to say, okay, it's all connecting, it's all wired up. These are passing, those are not passing. This has step definitions, those don't have step definitions. This has all, and I guess the passing covers that. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm at with it. But I think it's a common problem, and I think I might be able to contribute some tools to some of solving those problems with the traceability.
That'd be great, Michael.
No further
Like
questions
that's
here.
I had an issue with that too, right? Like the ADRs having these competing sort of roles as specs, and that's when I kind of like wasn't using Spark for a little bit when ADRs were like the new shiny object that I learned about kind of thing when Ruben was really pushing them. And uh, but what I found was when I went back to actually using Spark as the the top level, high level, 30,000 foot specification, it really did help to solidify those roles, right? And in terms of like it
Yeah, I
actually
agree.
looking at
Spark
this, yeah, when I was using
kind
Spark,
of
it's
has
like,
it a little bit
okay,
more
that's the
focused. I think.
specification. All right. And I was making my ADRs based on Spark, so it was a lot clearer, like, as opposed to this competing issue, which I've definitely wrestled with over the past, month.
And I think what you're describing, Michael, is exactly what the place we're trying to get to, where we're orchestrating and we have the determinate output that we want versus kind of 80% what we want and 20% take what you get and have to fix it after that, right? So
Yep.
And then it gets lost. It's like it starts putting ADRs in multiple places. It starts putting test artifacts in multiple places. Like it completely loses the file structure understanding. And then how does it know which ones are the latest and the right
And
ones? I have to constantly go and
why doesn't any of this happen to Roof? Right. That's my question: is what are we missing that he's doing?
He's a jazz musician. You know, he's riffing. He's
Yeah,
working through it.
there's
and
more to it than that. You know,
Yeah,
one of the
I think he
things
has
that I told him
files,
that's
like
different
maybe.
now than before is now he shows us what he's built. Before, when he was building things out, he was showing us the syntax of these are the commands I'm giving it. When we're no longer seeing those, we don't know what he's typing in.
But
Right.
really the difference between like we'll call it us and Reuven is domain knowledge. Like that is what it is. Like when he looks at a situation, he's like, "Oh, I know what's wrong. It's this." You know? And then he puts in his prompt, something that's very particular to the problem that he sees. And the more of that domain knowledge you have, the easier this process is. And like
Careful, you're conflating two types of domain there, right?
no, no, Martin. No, I'm not. Because what Stuart was asking was why is Reuven not experiencing these problems? He
Yeah.
is. It's just that he knows when he sees a problem or what's not working exactly amongst this gigantic project, which is like enterprise and scale in most cases. He can actually, because of his 30 years of experience, he's like, oh, this is just a problem I had on a project 15 years ago. I remember this, and we should use
I,
one of my million lines of sight that I
I,
have, and then
I
he's
don't think
able
it's
to
a
fix the problem.
I don't think it's a 15-year-old problem. I think it's a daily interacting with AI and
Mm.
recognizing when it's off track and how to get it back on track.
Yeah,
it's about
I
That's what
agree
I
with
see.
Guy there, because what I'm seeing is also that the daily interaction is and how I'm catching them, misbehaving and derailing from the. But if what I'm missing is letting go and giving them complete control. That's what Rove at some instances does. And that's like, I assume, system for memory and learning and everything, he managed to connect that to work. So that's like people are still having problem connecting the things that are available in all of these repos. So if you
I think
install Rooflow like originally, just follow default install, not everything will work out of the box.
Right.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that I'm not saying that he's solving a 15-year-old problem, guy. I'm saying that he's had reps on reps on reps on reps, and he is
we've all had
familiar.
that. We've all been
He's
in the industry a long time.
Yeah, and someone like yourself would be a lot better suited to handle these situations as well, right?
Yeah, but I think it's something in his tooling.
yeah, I can. So, let me share my screen. I this is an accident, but it's the best accident that has happened because so I'm building a dev tool platform, and so what I did is I was using Claude Code Web to build it. And this is after 3 days of creating the PRDs and all the documents and what should be there and what should not. This is the first time I actually asked Claude to tell me the next steps. Because what I found is when I go into Claude Code, sometimes it loses the context, and I hadn't set up the CLI, so I'm being a little lazy. But I did ask Ruth several times, do I lose anything if I build here versus the CLI? Do I have a larger context window? So what I did, and he said no. So I remain here, remain lazy, if you will. And so this platform is called Air Traffic. But what I did is I shared the screenshot with Claude, and I said, I told Claude, I'm building using this, not the CLI, because it first gave me prompts for the CLI. But this is after 2 days of going back and forth, figuring out the PRD and the GOAT plan. I still am unsure of how I want to use what how I want to use a GOAT plan. But it told me, Claude, not it, he or whatever, told me to put these documents into the repo. Create a repo, create these documents. This is the GOAT plan, the PRD, patents, master brief, continuation. This is so I had to go through 7 versions of Claude context windows, then the build instructions, and then what happened is it then told me to put all these documents into the repo, into the folder. Then what I did for the first time is I created, you guys know on this screen there's a create the Claude prompt. So I created the Claude MD file, not prompt, the MD file from the from Cloudco Web. Then it basically gave me a series of prompts. I also asked if it kind of goes off rails. It told me this is the structure of the prompt that needs to always, where is it? It gave me a structure that always needs to be in every prompt. Basically, what's happening is referencing back to the master brief and chaining together PRDs. I don't have ADRs in here. I don't think so, unless they're in the PRD. But and then like I said, QE Fleet is there all across the process. So it's building the different structures. But what I found, I don't know, I haven't tested this yet because I had to hit a wall. I'm trying to get some deployment tools, FlyIO or whatever. I ran into a wall with Superbase, and I don't want to pay for it more. So, yeah. So what I found is it references these files. I don't want to click in them because this is stealth right now. It was a stealth build, but I'll hopefully have it ready maybe by tomorrow.
Cool.
But that's just my 2 cents. I don't know if that works. I don't know if it's working, but it was a good experience because it went all the way through end to end. I'll go down. Let's see, I'll go all the way down. So it was telling me at each phase, what are the phases? Pass, right? And then let's scan down, test. So I'm testing every step of the way. Is showing the foundational components, the front end. I'm building the front end in 2 places. I'm building the kind of the easy way with Lovable. I need to get out of the habit with Lovable. I know that. And then also another front end. The plan is to get the first 1,000 customers and then quickly move off of Lovable. I can do a front end on Lovable, like a one-shot front end, and be ready to go and demo. So that's I kind of like it that way. And then so there's an ending. I'm trying to get to the ending. Where is it? It just shows, yeah. So, and then injected Terraform in there. So, this is me going back and forth because it's an open source and a community edition of this platform is my plan. So, there you go. I don't know if it's the right way, but I was been trying to figure out how to keep away from drift and how to get the ADRs to follow each other, and this process just worked for me. So,
in summary, you have an anchor document, right? And then you're
yes,
saying that the others are
I will
compliant
show
with
you
it.
also,
Yeah.
some of my tricks, but Offer has a question. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
And not a single document, Martin. It's anchor folders, anchor folder with multiple documents that it could reference back. And in each of the consecutive prompts, there was a tree, a breadcrumb referencing back to the main folder.
It seems like every time you clear the cache, the AI doesn't understand the directory hierarchy again. And we've done a lot of dumb things in the industry like reg where it just chunked a document randomly. I posted some things on memory, but page index was trying to get around that and say, hey, we're really querying by a hierarchy. The document has a hierarchy and it has a table of contents. And why am I not searching through the table of contents, going down and then picking up the pieces that make sense? It's like it totally ignores this structure that is available to it. And I think that's part of the challenge is, when you click fresh mind, clear context,
Well, the only
it
thing
has
that's
to
guaranteed
rediscover
to follow is
everything.
Claude MD, isn't it? So maybe the thing that Roof has is much better directions to, go find the anchor document and follow the ADRs before you look at anything else.
That's what came back when we were at, Nick and I was talking to him about it. I can't repeat it word for word, because I'm still learning and I don't completely understand it. But what you just said, Martin, made sense in how he answered it. Is how I can respond.
I observe there's two problems, right? We don't have a clean workflow that works for everybody, documented anywhere. And
Right.
number two, how memory works is a mystery. There's both memory built into Claude and there's memory in Claude Flow. And, arguably it should be, for me, I want my agent to have memory. I want my project to have memory. I want to have memory about my preferences. And it should understand those three different pools of memory based on the context we're in. Like shouldn't care about project 3 if I'm working on project 1. So yeah, there's like some
True.
core pieces here that I don't see, I guess. Looks like Ofer has had his hand up for a long time too.
Yeah, please.
Hi. Thank you. Now I'm looking forward to see what Dragon going to show. But in the meantime, yeah, I agree that like drift, I feel is like the biggest issue to solve. Claude is so good at one-off proof of concept. It looked great at the beginning. Few more prompts later, or when I clear the context, it's a hello world and it's deciding to do weird things. What I've been trying to do since like last week is finding certain prompts that I can just repeat and would keep Claude in check. My theory is when we say how Roof solving it is in a way a problem for the masses. It's great for Roof, but if I need a special knowledge that would help me tackle this for so many of the interaction of creating code, now depends on the level that your results may vary. And I'm trying to get it to constantly check itself, because at least in Claude Code experience, it's like, here you go, I did it. Once you're gonna oppose with a question, it will ask you like, oh yeah, I didn't mean it, or whoops, I forgot this, right? It's very like an oops mode of like it's happy to forget. So what I'm trying to do is creating first what needs to be resolved, because I think the challenge is of an existing code. I don't see that challenge when it's a new idea that I need to put together. That usually is great. Once it's already established and there's multiple parts that are working, that's where the challenge, where I'm trying to have it in visually. I'm looking at it, and I'll have it soon, probably visually as well, as a Kanban board, where the initial task is like, I have a problem to solve or a feature to add. The first most important thing is, how do I know that Claude understand what I want from it and not just a one shot trying to figure out because I just use 5 words. So making sure it is not vague. Once it is there, it come up with a plan and solving it. Once it tells me that's it, it's good to go, and it reminds me of Dragon's post of like, well, Claude told me it's done and nothing was done. All these things, I'm challenging it with, are you sure? But do you have a confidence? Can you score all the different items of, did it actually happen? Did you look in the code? And very important for me, go update documents, beads, GitHub issues, wherever the whatever was before and the fix that is now, is everything aligned? So I end up finding myself keep pressing the up arrow, to repeat the prompts. And that's where I thought, oh, this is great, because now I can say, here's the challenge. Now I can ask it, how confident are you from 0 to 100? How much would it take to get it to 95? When you think it's done, make sure you update all the documents and the beads. And I love recently they added a /simplify in Cloud Code, which is like actually looking in a new way and overviewing what you have and make the code just better quality. Now that I can repeat the same prompts and I don't need to be too smart when I'm trying to accomplish most of the things. I think this is a good system. I'm trying to create something like that where most people will be able to use it without interjecting, decades of knowledge in software engineering, and can still build things. Because as soon as I tell it, I need you to use this technology, in 2 days, it might decide to not do so. So having these checks, kind of helping it remember what it might have forgotten that is somewhere in the documentation, by keeping all of that aligned.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is test frameworks, right? So you have a bunch of test
And we are
that
back,
relate to
sorry,
the
and we are back to living documentation and keeping the
yeah.
documentation updated. So something that, those that are like 50 plus here, remember in the industry of waterfall and things that Agile tried to fix, with better
Yeah, indeed.
better way of like writing requirements. They tried like to change the way that's approached, but at the end we are back to documentation needs to be updated and keep updated in order. And now that specification, you can now regenerate complete code, but the original prompt or specification is from where you need to start. And if that we somehow make deterministic that this prompt will always produce this result, that's where, maybe pattern learning, rule vector, agent DB, reasoning thing came in hand for agents to understand. It will know to do that task really good, deterministically almost.
I wonder about vaporizing software on a periodic basis, whereby you'd take your code, you'd say, okay, turn it back into specification, rebuild the code, right? Because is that vaporizing step where things that don't quite fit would fall away, and you're left with essentially an evolving essence that is hanging from specification. So you throw away all of the code because it's so easy to write code, and when you've got dangling shit everywhere, vaporize it, get back to the essence, and if you're missing something, rebuild it.
That's a great segue into what I can show, if that's
Please.
okay. So, documentation, right? If we can go back to this ancient technology of cucumber and gherkin and feature files, which had,
behavior-driven development base. So it should define the expected behavior from the user point. And
Yeah.
they call it, this is the implementation gherkin, notion gherkin, but it really allows communication between. So this is really communication tool between product developers and quality-oriented persons, so they can all be on the same page what is planned to be built, and then can verify that in the end.
And can I quickly inject a question, Michael? So what Dragon's describing and what Offer is described seems to be different in the sense of what I do with Dragon approach, where you have all the documentation before you build, and then you build based on the documentation you gotten. What Ofer seems to be describing, correct me if I'm wrong, is you have some idea, you have some components, and then you start building and you fix along the way, in essence, kind of vibe engineering, which seems to be.
I don't think so. He was more about the existing code base. So if you try to plug in, but Mike has something to show. Yeah,
yeah.
That's like
so what
plugging
you're
in
talking
the existing.
About,
yeah.
In this case, it's 1.0, right? So I've got a partnership with a company where they had an existing application, and I partnered up with the organization, and we're now taking that legacy code, hardening it, modernizing it, and then adding a whole bunch of functionality to it, right? But, to Ofer's point, like, well, you've got legacy code, it's great if you start off greenfield, but what about legacy code? So essentially, one of the beautiful things about these AI servants that we have, and I'm very grateful to our robot overlords, but they are tireless in their ability to look at legacy code and generate fill the gap of documentation, right? So you've got this legacy code, it's got these functions, you don't know how it works. AI is really good at that. So what I did with this particular code base was I retroactively introduced behavioral driven development to this old code base. Okay, so now I have feature files for every one of the features that was in there. Okay, and for those of you who are maybe not familiar with BDD, you've got a feature file, and then within the feature you have a series of scenarios in that feature. So so for instance, in this case, it's currency management. I've got 7 scenarios, 22 total steps, and again, this is all pulled from. This isn't like a database. This is just extracted into a JSON file by analyzing the. This dashboard is a JSON file that's been extracted through an analysis of the repository. Okay, so you've got GitHub code. You've got a Claude looking at that code, saying, "Okay, I have a bunch of features in here that don't have feature files. I'm going to generate those, and then I'm going to try and test those." Because one of the things that's beautiful about the documentation that gets generated in Gherkin form is that it's not just like, well, this is what I think it does. It's this is what I think it does, and before I say for sure, I'm going to build step definitions for each of the steps in these scenarios such that they are testable documents. So now you have a documentation that for something that didn't have documentation before, and and there's always like, we don't trust the AI completely, so you've got to review this stuff, but there's a pretty good confidence level that you can get saying that I have documentation that I know is representative of what the application is, because I've had these things run through tests. And so it can go against it. You can run the step definitions and they'll go against the API and they'll check the different scenarios that are supposed to work. And then you can have Playwright look at the front end stuff and test all of the kind of integration and UX front end. And that way you're able to, so I was able to say, okay, I like to work with feature files for my new features, but the old stuff needs to kind of come in line. So to bring the legacy code up to compliance with my operational process, I generated the Gherkin, I generated the step definitions. Now I've got coverage for the legacy, that's the 1.0. And now I can move into the 2.0, which is where newer features are coming in, but it's all got the same sort of criteria for testing, documentation, and then furthermore, and this gives back to the whole drift problem, now you have a very kind of deterministic description, I guess is probably not the right term, but Claude Code can look at this now and not kind of riff. It can kind of say, okay, well, this is connected to this and this is connected to this. And you may need to coach Claude a little bit to say, look, this is kind of how these things are connected. Perhaps you'll remember from, CS 101, but, the Gherkin file works this way. And now you've got something that it can sort of hold on to, and it helps with the wayfinding as Claude is kind of trying to figure out where things belong and what it should be working on. And then you can do the other nice thing about this is you can start to do some analysis of your code base and see like, okay, this is covered, this is not covered. So for the ops user, I've got things are mostly done, but then for the buyer user, I've got a lot of I've got gaps. And there's other views that we have of this that are it lets you get a different perspective on your application by knowing how the pieces connect and where they this is a little bit odd, but you
This is
can
cool.
see
So this is giving you sort of the value proposition to each of the roles. right? So,
Yes.
as a thing, I can do such and such, and that's how I break it down and interact. And I wonder, like, if there's a way to stack up the value proposition towards the organization, or that's using it. Why are they using it, and what is the greater context of this? So,
Yep. And there's value proposition. There's like a template for that too. I don't know if you like there's the business model canvas, and then there's the value proposition canvas, which was
there's value chains and the rest of that, right?
yeah. So and you can link that directly into the features, and then you could add that as another dimension of the traceability. In fact, that's a great idea. I think I'll do that.
Happy to help.
So thank you.
Yeah.
But
is your tooling here usable by others?
not yet, not yet. This is but I will release this eventually if there's interest. I'm also working on something else that I'm going to open source, which is more on the traceability of the your Claude sessions. So like there's a question of like, well, what is it actually doing? And here's a case where I've got it looking at the JSON-L files in the session. And so you can kind of replay a session, see what it's been working on, and see, where there's redundancy, or where you've got a lot of IO that just doesn't make sense, or where you see where you could teach it to kind of behave in a more efficient way. And this has got oh, and the other nice thing about this is there's some other views that can kind of give you a sense of how it's working its way through the problem, and where it, if it's sometimes it goes like all over the place, and sometimes it's sort of focused in terms of how it's doing things. Like sometimes I'll look at these and see a lot of CD commands run, where it's like jumping over here, and now it's jumping over here, and it's jumping over here, and it's like, well, wait a minute, you seem to be lost. Like, you have some work over here, get that done, and then go back over here and do this other stuff. So this is a way of kind of visualizing the each one of your sessions to see how it did what it did, what was invoked, and get a better perspective on what it was doing and whether or not it could do things in a better way.
Can you drop the link?
And this is something that, what's that?
I said, you're saying that this is something that people could use.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, if people are okay with, something that's not quite there, but I did, this is public, I think, on GitHub. I'll put the link up.
Michael, your BDD application is a great conversation starter with the enterprises for bringing in the roof stack. Especially if you could, analyze what's there, and have a plan to update what's there, and then if there's some way to compare, say, gap analysis or something, you're here, refactor, and you get there. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, because I'll have a conversation with a client or a business partner, and I'll say, okay, we just kind of talk through it on like a meet call, right? And then I take those recordings, and I've got and this is where I was talking about the voice stuff, Matt, but I basically have it, parse the whole conversation, give me a transcript, and then I've got some other stuff that I do in terms of like the negotiation behavioral analysis to kind of figure out like where the customer is really focused on, or what's important to them, that sort of thing. But the core point is, by processing those transcripts, I can now say, okay, match this to the GitHub issues. What are there things here that are missing? Do we have new issues that we need to create? And then you start to create those stubs for all those different issues, and then you can say, all right, well, let's get into, so now we've got the gap that you're talking about. Let's fill that gap with speculative feature files, and then you can sort of review that, and like, it's okay, it sounds like this is how you want it to work. Is this right, this feature file? And if they're like, yes, that's what we want, then you can sort of have Claude kind of deliver the rest of that from feature to step to code.
That's pretty cool. That's a genius approach. Yeah. Yeah. The funny thing is I don't know, 10, 7, whatever years ago, I was the DevOps coach and working with teams doing BDD, TDD, and it at some point in the conversation was, I guess, a dying focus. But now it's here. It's back. It's more relevant than ever, right? Gherkin, TDD, behavior-driven development. I don't want to say dying, but I think the orgs were trying to move from waterfall to agile to adopting, in agile to DevOps, and in between the agile to DevOps, learning TDD, BDD.
But they were constantly catastrophical,
Yeah,
expressions about things dying in the industry,
yeah,
but
yeah.
you cannot kill good practices that
There
are
we go.
like a basic sense.
100%.
Yeah.
That's where I was trying to
They
get.
evolved over decades for a reason, right?
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they just call it in different ways. This is like the attempt to formalize again and put in certain frameworks things that are common sense for these kind of projects.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
So one of the things that we haven't done to date is actually ask people to submit cool projects that they have done or their successes that they've had. And I think, part of my original vision for that whole, what was called CB Radio was, as a feedback mechanism from the community at large. So assuming, Matt, and you're nodding, that you agree with this as a process, I very glibly added to the CB Radio page just now a collector video based on share your successes. So there's no actual video on the page yet, but you'll see, Matt, on the link that I just posted to the community page that you made, that I added at the top on that page, share your success. And maybe this is how we democratize and bulk ask the community to submit a little pitch, a 30-second overview of something that they've built and why they like it. And then we do something to make sure that it gets attention. So maybe we push that out onto a channel, or we make sure that we spotlight in a session like today. Right? We say, okay, what submissions have we had? Can we talk about the top 5? Maybe we group them. Can we get that submitter to present to us, why they, what the greatest thing about this thing was, and what feedback that they need, or somebody else that they want to have involved on that project with them.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. We can do a lot of different things with that. Content, long form, short form.
Yeah, we can push it out as YouTube Shorts, right? I mean,
Yeah.
nothing stopping us splitting up this video today and getting the process rolling.
And the great part about what you just said is that that's the feedback loop, creating the feedback loop we need to kind of just support the community and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise the only person speaking is the person who always gets to speak, right? But, that isn't bringing unity to this community, right? So I think that there are so many bright voices and we need to give them airtime.
Agree. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there still time, or we half past?
Well, we've got a couple of minutes. How about you lead us out, Dragon?
Okay, so maybe if I can share.
Should be active.
Okay,
Yeah,
Michael is still sharing, but no, okay, I can share. And
yeah.
Okay. Okay, not the release notes. But here, first, I wanted to show I'm using something from our Kiwi friend, Chris Barlow. So for the ADRs, I am not using classical roofs ADR architecture, or I instruct the agents to go and check this enhanced format because it's more in a why statement and not the specification type as originally. If you use the system architect from Rooflow, you will get like a standard ADR format, but this why statement format I think helps because it says, explains the context and what were the challenges, why we decided, and what was neglected to achieve what. And I wanted to show how I'm tracking the ADRs, as I have a lot of them right now. So I have one umbrella ADR that I will use to track the progress of the ADRs. And initially it was filled with the ADR, then I started adding the links because the file grew too much. But here I can track the status, and looks like I didn't updated the latest implementation. So ADRs themselves are updated, but now I need to go back and update the status.
Sharing. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I think I may
Yeah.
have interrupted, or I didn't realize I was still sharing. All right. I don't see your
Yeah.
screen.
You're sharing, but there is a second tab. So I started sharing, so there should be a second tab in the Zoom.
Yeah, we see dragons.
Somebody who was, not looking at at the moment. So how does my ADR looks like? So this is one for the Loki mode that I added, like for like inspired by the Loki mode platform now for orchestration. So this is one of the, and it gives, relates to other ADRs. So it creates relationship between ADRs, how they are connected.
Dragon, do you have a skill or any specific of creating this format of ADR?
No, I didn't create a specific skill because I have this like, and I just copy this row when I need to start working on a, first time on the ADRs in a project like a greenfield or like mapping on an existing project to recreate into ADRs, I will copy this and just paste it as a initial prompt and say, use this as a format to create ADRs. And you can create a skill on top of that. And maybe shortly, the context problem. So Matt, continuing on your like ADRs, yes. Then go plan, phased go plan for the what needs to be done. And
Okay.
it needs to be phased. And then you go phase by phase, implement one phase, and then brutal honesty review of what has been done.
Okay.
Maybe multiple times, because I'm not letting it go to the next phase until I'm satisfied after a number of iterations of checking if not everything is implemented by integrated, and I can execute the user flow through the part that was being built, if it's possible, if it's like a vertical that I can, really use in the system in that moment when I'm adding it to the system.
Okay.
Clearing the context helps a lot. So you use also the goal plan to track the progress of what agents. So when anything is done, instruct them to go back and update the progress so you can reference. So I'm starting fresh, like a clear context. Then I go back, read the goal plan, check what we done so far, analyze what was really implemented, and I am grounding it in that context, and then it starts working on the next phase.
Okay.
As Roof gets busier, right? I think us being able to, because of course he's got his chip business, right? I think us being able to collectively say, this should be the default direction for people using, the collective version of his tools. That might be something that we want to talk about, and how we at least allow someone to opt into that sort of guidance, right? So there's a guidance tool that I know Roof built in, but maybe that's something we want to full control.
Yeah, when I suggested to Roof, in general, he said he would gladly get any help. But my suggestion was, as he's building tools, we might have a group that make them ready for production, making sure they don't have for the average use is good enough. Because I think today, if you use a tool, you're expecting a lot of documentation, say a lot of things might work. Practically, you need a lot of cloud coding in the meantime. And I'm thinking, as these alpha versions coming out, maybe our group, some people here that inspired to do so, I'll be happy to be part, making it ready for the masses to consume as a non-alpha, while still bringing like all the great things that are keep coming out.
Maybe a process with that offer is linking with Michael. Michael is going to be spearheading the open source committee, if you will. So maybe that's a good connecting point for the
There
two.
does seem to be alignment with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we have conversation like on Discord, somewhere else, like any async. Where would be the best place to connect?
I'm on Discord. I'm in the group there. So if you want to just look for me, I can reach out to you now, probably.
Yeah, we have committee chats for particular committees, and I would encourage that we designate a home for a given type of conversation, because Discord can be a big place, and as such, things get lost. And if there's only 3 people and they're talking in different channels, well, then they are not talking. Right? There is an open source projects committee channel. I will dump the I would dump the invites to that right now in the channel. Just gonna make sure I don't make it so that it doesn't expire. Can I do that? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I will paste that. Okay, I will copy that again into the chat. That should both invite you into the Discord and land you in a chat called Open Source Projects, which I would assume is the right kind of name for what we are trying to do.
Yeah.
And I am quite strongly opinionated that Discord is a much better place for these sorts of conversations, even though actually most people currently talking WhatsApp. WhatsApp is designed for privacy, and when you are trying to share knowledge, it's kind of the opposite type of platform that you want. There are quite hard limits on what you can get out of WhatsApp, on what sort of bots you can have monitoring WhatsApp. With those, it's like 1,200 people, not 500,000 people. You can't copy multiple lines of text out of a WhatsApp. Why? Because it's designed so that people will at most take a screenshot of a set of pages, not compile 5 days worth of material, which is what really the summary bot, for example, that I have for Discord is able to do. Yeah, Matt.
Yeah, just a quick question for Dragon. I agree with you, Martin. And then for some reason, most people are preferencing WhatsApp, but the advantage of Discord is you can jump on a live call, you do a live session. So as we go forward, there's a lot of advantage. But Dragon I don't think I'm doing Agent QE justice by just pointing. Okay, here's my question. You have a bunch of specialized skills, specialized testing agents within Agent QE. How can I ensure or declare when to use which one, or make sure that it is using when it wants the entirety of the possibility of agentic QE. Hopefully, I explained.
So my suggestion is until you learn which one you can use at which phase,
Okay.
ask Claude. So
Okay.
analyze current status of my project, go check QE agents and skills, and select the best for this task.
Okay. Okay. All right. Perfect.
So
Thanks.
you need to ask it, I want to achieve this. So I want to analyze security. I want to do the visual check. I want to check the accessibility. So what are you interested in? Like the current status of the code. Like I'm repeating brutal honesty review. So use that when agents are finishing the phase. But there is now not only that, there is agent like a devil's advocate that does additional digging in if agents are claiming completed by, completion theater and not, really. I will share also here something maybe for.
So what you're talking
Yeah.
about, Dragon, is a perfect point in the fact that you go read. So there's a big difference between vibe coding and agentic engineering. It took me 3 days to start the build process for ad traffic because I had to go back and forth between the context window. Those 3 days, it took longer to research and figure out what to do. Plus, I've been in and around tech for 15 years, so I can talk to you about almost anything or at least understand it. So my experience, the 3 days building the documentation, it took longer to do that than to actual build the working platform, but it's the critical component because it's the experience of the person that's bringing in and building the stuff, right? So the folks that are new on this call just kind of understand and learn and hear the vernacular, but it's more about knowing the components of the stack and how the system should work is I think the critical points. If I say anything, yeah, can't and you reminded me about that. Just because we can one shot a lot of things, right? Using Lovable, you can get a whole website in 10 minutes, but this is different. So,
Yep.
One shot leaves a lot of blood.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you guys. I need to go pick my daughter from school.
Okay,
So it
okay.
was a pleasure again, and
Likewise.
probably see you tomorrow at the Hackerspace.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Great conversation, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.